AD 33, the Roman government crucified Jesus. They nailed him to a cross to let the world know that if you mess with the Roman Empire, you're going to get crucified. Years later, when Paul went to Thessalonica, the Romans tried to kill him too because he worshipped Christ instead of Caesar. And when Nero became emperor of Rome, he began the first full-scale persecution of Christians, cutting Paul's head off in AD 67. And soon, the empire began to throw Christians into the Roman Colosseum. They'd feed the Christians to the lions, bears, and dogs, while the crowd roared with excitement. While Christians debated about the Bible, is it inerrant, is it infallible, should we let the Gnostics in with their crazy goat stories? While Christians debated these issues among themselves, at the same time, they were hiding from the law, sitting around the dinner table, wondering if by tomorrow they would be a lion's lunch. But the more the Roman Empire persecuted the church, the faster the church grew. When you're being persecuted for your faith, it forces you to take your faith a little more seriously. Because if you really don't believe this, if Jesus doesn't really matter that much to you and you're just in church for your friends and for snack time, then you should probably quit church because the Roman Empire is going to come and cut your head off. So the more Rome persecuted Christians, the more hardcore and serious the Christians became about their faith, growing into a bigger and bigger thorn in the side of the empire, until eventually, in AD 300, Rome decided upon a full-scale genocide. At the time, the Roman Empire controlled pretty much everything in this box. There was nowhere to hide. As many as 20,000 Christians were executed. Then something crazy happened. Something no one could have anticipated. Caesar, the ruler of Rome, the master of the entire Mediterranean world, the emperor himself, became a Christian. His name was Constantine, the young Emperor Constantine, and the year was AD 312. And it was the night before a great battle, a battle where the Emperor Constantine was to lead his troops against an army that was twice as big as his own. Now, Constantine understood that sleep before the big day was more important than last-minute preparations, a lesson I think a few of you have learned with exam season coming. So, Constantine went to bed, and that night, Constantine had some sort of vision in a dream. He saw the sun in his dream burn in the shape of a cross, and in the sky he saw these words, "By this sign you will conquer." Now, it's hard to know what actually happened that night, but what historians do know is that the next day, Constantine ordered all of his troops to paint the sign of the Christian cross on their shields. And with crossed shields, Constantine led his troops into battle against an army almost twice their size. And he won. By this sign, he did indeed conquer, just like the visions said he would. And AD history, Anno Domini history, history in the year of our Lord, history would never be the same again. After the battle, Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which basically just said that Christians could no longer be persecuted for their faith in the Roman Empire. Christians praised Constantine, crying out, "All hail Constantine! One empire, one God, one emperor! Constantine is God's servant, and he's single, ladies." And by that I mean he only has 2 wives, so he has at least 5 slots available if anybody is interested. Christians loved Constantine. Some even called him Saint Constantine. They chanted his name over and over again. Constantine, Constantine, Constantine. Come on, chant with me. Constantine, Constantine, Constantine. That was pathetic. Come on, one more time. Constantine, Constantine, Constantine. Constantine made Christianity legal for the very first time in AD history, but it didn't stop there. Constantine didn't just tolerate Christians, he favored them. He began to rebuild the churches that had been destroyed by former emperors. He brought Christians into the government, and he gave the church more power than it had ever dreamed of. He even began to push Christianity onto the Roman citizens. And by the year 380 AD, Christianity was declared the official religion of the Roman Empire. Almost overnight, Christians went from the most persecuted people group to the most powerful people group. The Roman Empire that had hunted the church now became the church's lapdog, doing its bidding. The Christians that once hid from the government now were the government, like rebellious teens who grew up and became the very people they once rebelled against. The martyrs had become the masters. The witnesses had become judges wielding power and might. Christians were no longer the underdogs. Now Christians were the ones in power. Often they would use that power for good, to build hospitals, to help the poor, to love their neighbor. And sometimes Christians would use that power for bad. To tear down other religions, to help the rich become richer, to love power instead of their neighbor. And Constantine is the turning point. Many people use Constantine as the marker for the moment that Christianity sold out. And perhaps they're right. For better or for worse, 312 AD is the year in history when everything changed. When Christianity became the dominant religion of the West, when the church and state got mixed into one, when the cross became a weapon on a shield, when God and empire got it on, when Christ and Caesar became one. We began our journey in Jerusalem, down here in AD 33, when Jesus left. Then we watched Paul bring Christianity up into Asia Minor. He's the yellow line here, and he went up and he took it to Philippi, then to Thessalonica, then to Athens, then to Corinth, then to Ephesus. And then we watched as in chains Paul was dragged to Rome, and he brought Christianity to Rome. And in the next step of AD history, Constantine takes Christianity from Rome and spreads it everywhere. From Jerusalem to Rome to all of Europe, Constantine baptized the West. In the 8300s, pretty much everyone in the Roman Empire became a Christian, or at least they all said they were Christians. They had to call themselves Christians because that's what everyone in the empire was supposed to do. The Roman Empire, they went to church and they did the rituals and they wore crosses around their neck and they pretended to listen to their pastor rant. And they called themselves Christians because that's what everyone did. For many people, they didn't really love Jesus or have a deep personal faith. They were just Christians in name. They just called themselves Christians because Constantine told them to. And if a different religion had come to power that worshipped a giant monkey, the same people would have offered sacrifices of bananas and feces because they just did what they were told. Their faith wasn't really their own. They were Christians in name only. And because Christians weren't persecuted anymore, they weren't forced to wrestle with what they believe on a deeper level. They didn't have to go all in with their lives. They could just call themselves Christians, and it didn't mean much anymore. It's a lot easier to call yourself a Christian when nobody's holding a gun to your head. It was comfortable, convenient, cultural Christianity. Being a Christian became part of being a Roman. If you were Roman, you were a Christian. It was just assumed. But this led to many Christians not having their own personal faith. They just went with culture, but their own heart wasn't in it. And so, because of Constantine, the Roman Empire was full of Christians, yes, but most of them were nominal Christians. Nominal means in name only. A nominal Canadian, for example, would be someone who was born in Canada, but they weren't raised here. They don't have a lot of Canadian culture in them. You know, they don't love hockey. They haven't adapted to the cold. They don't love making fun of Americans yet. That's like Canadians' favorite pastime, is we get together and we make fun of how the American government's doing things. They're a nominal Canadian. Canadian in name only. A nominal American would be someone who's an American citizen but doesn't shoot guns or hate Mexicans. See, that's some of that anti-Americanism coming out. I love you, wife, American wife. A nominal Jew, some of you are like, where's he going with this? A nominal Jew would be someone who likes some of the traditions. They celebrate Hanukkah, but they don't really have a relationship with God for themselves. They might go through the religious rituals because their family does it, but it doesn't mean much for them personally. And a nominal Christian is someone who calls themselves a Christian, but it's really just a nice title and not much more. And Rome in the AD 300s, after Constantine, was full of nominal Christians. Full of nominal Christians who went to church on Sunday, but didn't live like Christians the other 6 days of the week. Nominal Christians who slapped on the Christian name at church, but were basically atheists at home, at school, at work, and when they were alone. Christians who were baptized as babies because everyone else in the empire got baptized as babies. Christians who are Christians because their parents took them to church, but they never really made their faith their own. Nominal Christians who prayed before their meals because their mama told them to, but they enjoyed their steak dinner more than they've ever enjoyed actually praying. Nominal Christians who enjoy singing in church, but the lyrics mean nothing to them. They might as well be at a Taylor Swift concert. Christians who might be quite involved in church, might even run church programs, but it's not really about God anymore. It's just about getting stuff done. Nominal Christians who are Christians when it's convenient, but as soon as God asks them to give up something they don't want to, faith suddenly isn't as important. Nominal Christians whose faith might even be stable, but they're never really growing. They're never improving. They're never working through their baggage or their issues. They're never moving closer to God or to each other. Nominal Christians who say their prayers, sing the church songs, attend the events, serve in the community, but they're just going through the motions. Their heart isn't in it. Christians who might do good things. They might risk their lives for others and put out forest fires, but the fire in their heart for God is dying. Only a few embers are left. Nominal Christians who do all the right things. They don't swear, they don't cheat, they don't steal, and they also don't have a relationship with Jesus. Christians who love singing Amazing Grace, but they've never really felt forgiven themselves. Those silly, silly Roman Christians in the AD 300s after Constantine, how could they be so nominal? How could they be so stupid? Oh wait, we're not really talking about them anymore. We're talking about ourselves. In Matthew 7, Jesus says this: "Not everyone who says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' will enter the kingdom of heaven. Many will say to me on judgment day, 'Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name do many great things?' Then I will tell them plainly, 'I never knew you. Away from me.'" I don't like fear. I don't like when priests on TV or on street corners yell about hell and sin and judgment and try to scare people into spirituality or guilt people to God. I don't like fear. But perhaps a little fear, in the right context, is appropriate. Fear, when you're fighting for your life, can give you that extra surge of adrenaline that helps you survive and keep going. And when I read these words of Jesus in Matthew 7, what I feel is fear. How scary is it that we can go through all the motions? You can even prophesy in Jesus' name, and you can drive out demons, and you could do many great things. You could lead worship on Sunday, and you could be on the deacon board, and you could go to church consistently every Sunday and raise money for charity. But you might just be going through the motions. You might have been doing it for all the wrong reasons. Your heart might have actually been nominal all along. You might still die and hear these words: "I never knew you. Away from me." Jesus' words scare me. And perhaps they should. Perhaps a little fear is what is needed to shake me from my nominal hypocrisy. Perhaps fear, in the right context, is appropriate. Perhaps you should be a little afraid as well. Afraid that underneath our Christian mask, underneath the charade of our polite church-going, underneath our superficial acts of Christian kindness, that deep down we're just a bunch of nominal Christians who don't really give a crap. Afraid that we are Christians in name only. Afraid that you know how to look like a Christian, but you don't know God. Afraid that we are Christians who sing, "Lord, Lord," in church on Sundays, but use the Lord as a cover for our secret lives the other 6 days of the week. And when our weeks are finally spent, we'll die and hear the words, "I never knew you. Away from me." So what do? How do we break out of that comfortable, convenient, easy Christianity of Constantine that's in name only? How do we go from nominal faith to phenomenal faith? I've been waiting the whole sermon to use that line. How do we go from nominal faith to phenomenal faith? It's easy. For 3 easy payments of $19.99, we will ship you phenomenal faith. Shipping and prayer not included. I wish it was that easy. I wish you could just pay some money, or there was some 1, 2, 3 Dr. Phil step program that you could just do, and then you'd have phenomenal faith overnight. But at the end of the day, the only way to change is this: you have to decide to give a crap. You have to wake up and decide, I'm doing this. I'm all in. I'm ready to go. Today I'm going to follow God. And then a week later, when you haven't actually done anything you said you were going to do, you have to wake up and decide once again, I'm doing this. I'm all in. I'm ready to go. Today I'm going to follow God. You have to keep redeciding over and over again to care about God and church and faith. And over time, after stopping and starting and struggling and wrestling, eventually you do actually get somewhere. Some of you are waiting for the right time to get serious about your faith. You're waiting till work slows down or school's over or the conditions are right. But let me tell you, it will never be perfect. It will never be easy. It will never be convenient. The time will never be right. Stuff will always come up and get in the way. Ultimately, you just have to decide for yourself, I'm going to do this now. I'm all in. No more half-hearted faith. No more easy Jesus. No more playing at church. This actually matters. I want to know God. I'm really going to do this. And when you don't do it, when you stay nominal and don't do anything to grow in your faith, you also need to turn to God with that. See, we're all hypocrites. We all say things that we can't live up to. None of us are perfect. All of us, to varying degrees, are nominal. The difference between a nominal Christian and a phenomenal Christian is not that one is perfect and the other isn't. Both will keep screwing up. The difference is that when the nominal person screws up, they no longer go to Jesus with their failure. They just feel ashamed. They repress their guilt. They don't deal with it. And then they become hard and numb and cut themselves off even further from God and from the community. But the phenomenal Christian keeps returning to God over and over again when they fall, finding forgiveness, getting back up, and starting again. The difference between a nominal Christian and a phenomenal Christian is grace. One chases after God's grace and forgiveness. The other runs away from it. Jesus died for your sins, for your lust and lies and gossip, and yes, even for your nominalism. Both the nominal Christian and the phenomenal Christian are nominal in the sense that both screw up, and both will have times when they struggle to care about God or church or anything. The difference is that the nominal person doesn't go to God with their nominalism, and the phenomenal person does. You will have seasons of life where you are nominal, where you don't want to pray or talk to God or really care about any of this. But keep returning to God. Confess those times. Tell Him when your heart isn't in it. Yell it if you have to. Dang it, God, why am I so nominal? Why don't I care? Why don't I long for you like I once used to? God is a patient listener. You are building your relationship with Him by the very fact that you are venting your frustration and nominalism to Him. Even when you're just communicating to God how nominal you are, you're still communicating. And communication is the key to relationship. Even when you're ranting to God about how nominal you are, you're still talking to Him and letting Him in. He's getting to know you, and you are getting to know Him. I've had weeks where I just don't want to read the Bible. Sundays where I really don't want to come here and preach to you guys. I want to go watch Age of Ultron instead. Months I've had where I'm just tired of praying and fighting temptation and trying to keep growing in my faith. I've even had a couple bad years in my faith here and there. And something God has been teaching me is to come to Him with my nominalism. To bring my apathy and weariness and my spiritual deadness and lay it at the foot of the cross. The phenomenal Christian realizes when they're going through a season of nominalism, they talk to God about it, and God walks with them through the long nominal desert. But the nominal Christian just wallows in their nominalism and becomes numb. They don't communicate their nominalism to God, so they get to the end of their life and they discover they never knew God at all. They were great at playing the part of a Christian, but they never really knew Christ. In AD 33, Jesus left us a mission. His Spirit came to bring it to fruition. Then Peter pissed off the Sanhedrin, so Saul martyred Stephen. But Saul became Paul and went through many trials to bring the gospel to the Gentiles. Soon, a new Bible began to form, its survival tested by a Gnostic swarm as Constantine's arrival took Rome by storm. Through Constantine's arrival and conversion, Christianity took the Roman Empire by storm. Constantine converted and made Christianity legal in AD 312. After centuries of persecution and after months of hearing sermons about it, Christians have finally won the West, for better and for worse. Christianity had come from Jerusalem to Rome and from Rome to the entire empire, but being told what to believe by Constantine didn't lead citizens to a very genuine personal faith of their own. And this nominal Christianity through the Roman Empire spread to all of Europe. And then from Europe, it was eventually exported to Africa, North America, South America, to China, to all over the world. And so here we are today in 2015 AD, still struggling with our nominalism, still wrestling with the cultural Christianity that Constantine brought about, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But we can't just blame Constantine forever. Eventually, children have to stop blaming their parents for all of their problems and start being responsible for their own lives. It's time to confront your own nominalism. Don't wait till next week. Don't wait till next month when you have more time. Don't wait till next year when things settle down. You wait too long and you find yourself hearing the words, "I never knew you." Today, this hour, this very minute, it's time to stop and confront your nominalism.